Leviticus chapter 11. And Yahweh spoke to Moshe and Aaron, saying to them,
Speak to the children of Israel, saying, These are the animals you may eat among all the beasts upon the land. You may eat any animal that has a split hoof, completely divided, and which chews the cud. These you may eat. Nevertheless, there are some that only chew the cud, or only have a split hoof. You must not eat these. The camel, because it chews the cud, but does not have a split hoof, it is unclean to you. The coney, or rock badger, because it chews the cud, but does not have a split hoof, it is unclean to you. The rabbit, because it chews the cud, but does not have a split hoof, it is unclean to you. And the pig, although it has a split hoof completely divided, yet it does not chew the cud, it is unclean to you. Their meat you shall not eat, and their carcasses you shall not touch, they are unclean to you. These you may eat of all that are in the waters, whatever has both fins and scales in the waters, whether in the seas or in the rivers, that you may eat. But everything in the seas or in the rivers that does not have both fins and scales, but everything in the seas or in the rivers that does not have both fins and scales, whether among all the fish that school, or among all the other living creatures in the water, they are an abomination, and they will be an abomination to you. You must not eat their flesh, but you shall regard their carcasses as an abomination. Whatever is in the waters, not having both fins and scales, is to be abominable to you. These you shall regard as abominable among the birds. They shall not be eaten, for they are an abomination. The eagle, the vulture, the buzzard, the kite, and the falcon after their kinds, every raven after its kind, the ostrich, the horned owl, the seagull, and the hawk after its kind, the little owl, the fisher owl, and the screech owl, the white owl, the desert owl, the osprey, the stork, the heron after its kind, the hoopoe, and the bat. All flying insects that walk on all fours will be an abomination to you. Yet these you may eat of every flying insect that walks on all fours, those which have jointed legs above their feet for hopping on the ground. These you may eat, the locust after its kind, the destroying locust after its kind, the cricket after its kind, and the grasshopper after its kind. But every other flying insect which has 4 feet shall be an abomination to you, and by these you will make yourself become unclean. Whoever touches the carcass of any of them will be unclean until sunset. Whoever picks up one of their carcasses must wash his clothes and be unclean until sunset. The carcass of every animal which does not have a split hoof completely divided, and which also does not chew the cud, is unclean for you. Everyone who touches its carcass shall be unclean. Of all the animals that walk on all fours, those that walk on their paws are unclean for you. Whoever touches any such carcass shall be unclean until sunset. Whoever picks up their carcasses shall wash his clothes and be unclean until sunset. They are unclean to you. Of the animals that move about on the ground, these are unclean to you: the mole, the rodent, and the large lizard after its kind, the gecko, the monitor lizard, the sand reptile, the sand lizard, and the chameleon. These are unclean to you among all that moves about on the ground. Whoever touches them when they are dead shall be unclean until evening. When one of them dies and falls on something, that article, whatever its use, shall be unclean, whether an item of wood, clothing, skin, or sack. Whatever item it is that is used in work, it must be put in water, and it shall be unclean until sunset. Then it shall be clean. Any earthenware vessels, which their carcasses fall into, must be broken, and whatever was in the vessel shall be unclean. Any food that could be eaten, but has water on it from such a vessel, is unclean, and any liquid that could be drunk from it is unclean. Anything that one of their carcasses falls upon shall be unclean. A clay oven or cooking stove must be broken down. They become unclean and shall be unclean to you. Nevertheless, a spring or a cistern for collecting water shall remain clean. But whoever touches one of these carcasses becomes unclean. If a carcass falls on any seeds that are to be sown, they remain clean. But if water has been put on the seed, then a carcass falls on it, it is then unclean to you. If an animal you are allowed to eat dies, he who touches its carcass shall be unclean until sunset. Anyone who eats of its carcass shall wash his clothes, and be unclean until sunset. He also who carries its carcass shall wash his clothes, and be unclean until sunset. Every creature that moves about on the ground, including worms, slugs, snails, turtles, lizards, frogs, and snakes, is an abomination. It shall not be eaten, whether it moves about on its belly, or walks on all fours, or on many feet among all creatures that move about on the ground. These you shall not eat, for they are an abomination. You shall not make yourselves abominable with any creature that moves about on the ground. Do not defile yourselves by means of them, nor be made unclean by them. I am Yahweh your heavenly Father. You shall therefore consecrate and sanctify yourselves, and you shall be holy, for I am holy. Neither shall you defile yourselves with any creature that moves about on the ground. I am Yahweh who brought you up out of the land of Egypt, to be your heavenly Father. You shall therefore be holy, for I am holy. This is the law of the animals, and the birds, and every living thing that moves in the waters, and every creature that moves about on the ground. You must distinguish between the unclean and the clean, between the animal that may be eaten and the animal that may not be eaten.